The artist's paintings are burned in front of everyone's eyes, but her work becomes a voice of resistance. The crowd in the square stood in stunned silence, the crackling flames consuming not just canvases, but a piece of the artist's soul. Children clung to their parents, unsure of the spectacle before them, while adults exchanged uncertain glances, torn between outrage and fear. At the center of it all, Olivia, a woman with weathered hands and deep, soulful eyes, stood motionless, watching years of her labor vanish into smoke. The fountain at the heart of the square burbled on, indifferent to the injustice unfolding beside it. Olivia had spent countless mornings and afternoons sketching by its edge, her easel a familiar presence to locals who admired her talent. For 20 years, she had turned the simple moments of her community into vibrant works of art, portraits of laughter, struggle, and resilience. Her art had become a thread in the fabric of the neighborhood, capturing its spirit with every brushstroke. Earlier that day, the square had been alive with its usual energy. Vendors called out their wares, children's laughter rang in the air, and pigeons flapped noisily as they scattered from the fountain's edge. Olivia had been working on a portrait of a young boy with an impish grin, his face alight as he held a weathered soccer ball. His mother stood nearby, proud and beaming. Olivia's tools, simple but cherished, were spread out neatly: a wooden easel, a worn leather satchel, and a palette rich with vibrant colors. She painted with the quiet confidence of someone who knew the square as well as she knew the lines of her own hands. That confidence was shattered when Officer Gerald, a towering figure in his dark uniform, approached. His boots clicked sharply against the cobblestones, each step reverberating with authority. Olivia had seen him before, his gaze lingering on her setup, his frown deepening with every passing day. This time he stopped directly in front of her, his shadow cutting across her work. "You've been here too long, Olivia," Gerald said, his tone flat but unmistakably firm. "This isn't a gallery, and you don't have permission to set up shop." "I'm not selling anything," Olivia replied, keeping her voice steady. "People give what they can for my work. I'm sharing art, not running a business." Gerald's eyes narrowed as he reached down and picked up one of her smaller sketches, a delicate rendering of the fountain surrounded by a bustling market. "Looks like business to me," he said, crumpling the paper in his hand and tossing it to the ground. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and Olivia's chest tightened. "You don't have to do that," she said quietly, bending to retrieve the discarded piece. "You're taking up space meant for everyone." Gerald said, his voice rising, "Pack it up or I'll make you." Before she could respond, he grabbed a stack of her finished works and threw them to the ground. The boy's mother protested, her voice sharp with indignation, but Gerald ignored her. His lighter flicked open, and in seconds, flames devoured Olivia's labor. The crowd watched, horrified, as the paintings disintegrated, their vibrant hues turning to ash. Olivia's hands trembled at her sides, her voice caught in her throat. She wanted to shout, to argue, to fight, but decades of experience had taught her the cost of defiance. Instead, she gathered what she could, her shoulders hunched under the weight of humiliation. Gerald stood by, his smirk a stark contrast to the grief on her face. "Let this be your last warning," he said. "Next time, you're leaving in cuffs." As the crowd dispersed, murmuring their discontent, Olivia felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. It was Martha, a retired teacher who had once posed for one of Olivia's portraits. "This isn't right," Martha said softly. "You don't deserve this." Olivia nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She walked back to her small apartment above a bakery, the scent of fresh bread mingling with the acrid memory of smoke. Inside, her studio felt emptier than ever, the walls adorned with pieces that now seemed like relics of a time when her art was untouched by fear. That night, Olivia couldn't sleep. Her mind replayed the scene over and over, each detail sharpening the ache in her chest. The laughter of children, the hum of the square, the crackle of flames, it all seemed so far away now, a world that no longer welcomed her. She sat at her desk, staring at a blank canvas, her hand hovering over it but unable to commit to a single line. The next morning, the square felt different. Word of the incident had spread, and when Olivia arrived, she found a small group of supporters waiting. Martha was there, along with several others who had admired Olivia's work over the years. They had brought flowers, cards, and even a few of her salvaged sketches. "We're not letting this go," Martha said, her voice firm. "Your art is a part of this place, and we're going to make sure everyone knows it." Olivia felt a flicker of warmth in her chest, but it was quickly tempered by doubt. "What can we do?" she asked. "Gerald has the authority, and I can't afford another confrontation." Martha smiled, her eyes gleaming with determination. "We'll do what you've always done. We'll tell a story. But this time, it'll be the whole community telling it." Over the next few days, the square became a hive of activity. Martha rallied volunteers, while local artists and residents came together to plan a public exhibition. They set up easels around the fountain, displaying Olivia's surviving works alongside new pieces created in solidarity. Children contributed their own drawings, their vibrant crayon scrawls a testament to the joy Olivia had brought to their lives. Social media buzzed with posts about the event, photos of Olivia's burned paintings, juxtaposed with messages of support. The hashtag #ArtIsResistance began trending, drawing attention from beyond their small town. On the day of the exhibition, the square was transformed. Banners fluttered in the breeze, and the fountain was adorned with flowers. A steady stream of visitors flowed through, admiring the art and sharing their stories of how Olivia's work had touched them. Martha stood at the center of it all, her voice carrying above the crowd as she recounted the injustice Olivia had faced. When Olivia arrived, the crowd erupted into applause. She hesitated at the edge of the square, overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. Martha hurried to her side, taking her arm and leading her toward the center. "This is for you," Martha said, her voice filled with pride. "You've always been there for this community, and now we're here for you." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes as she looked around. Faces she had painted, some long ago, smiled back at her. Children held up their drawings, eager to show her their work. She knelt down to examine a colorful sketch of the fountain, her heart swelling with gratitude. As the day wore on, a sense of hope began to replace the bitterness of the past week. Olivia spoke with visitors, listening to their stories and marveling at the way her art had woven its way into their lives. She even joined a group of children, teaching them how to shade their drawings and bring their subjects to life. Toward the end of the day, Gerald appeared at the edge of the square. The chatter quieted, and all eyes turned to him. For a moment, he stood motionless, his expression unreadable. Then, to everyone's surprise, he stepped forward. "I was wrong," he said, his voice steady but subdued. "I let my biases guide my actions, and I acted out of line. I'm sorry for the harm I caused." The crowd murmured in disbelief, their gazes shifting between Gerald and Olivia. She stood frozen, her emotions a whirlwind of anger, relief, and uncertainty. Finally, she stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Words are a start," she said, "but actions matter more. If you truly mean what you say, you'll work to ensure this doesn't happen again. Not to me, not to anyone." Gerald nodded, his face somber. "I will." The tension in the square began to ease, replaced by a quiet sense of resolution. As Gerald walked away, the crowd turned back to Olivia, their applause filling the air once more. That night, Olivia returned to her studio, her heart lighter than it had been in days. She sat at her desk, pulled out a fresh canvas, and began to paint. Her strokes were bold, her colors vibrant, her spirit unbroken. She painted the square, not as it had been, but as it could be, a place of unity, resilience, and hope. The next morning, as the sun rose over the square, Olivia set up her easel once more. Her art, like her spirit, had survived the flames, and she was ready to share it with the world again.